there's going to be a bunch of people that'll be filing in for the next few minutes, but we'll get started. So we're committed to going for an hour today. So if there's a few people that come in late, so be it. All right, guys. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of our Freight Currents event, first one of 2026. So I think we can still say Happy New Year, even though it's the 15th. Very pleased to welcome back John Min, the Chief Economist over at Monex. This is the third time that John's joined us now. And his content is always hugely relevant and really insightful. We had the privilege of having a run through just a couple of days ago, so I'd strongly encourage you to grab a pen and a piece of paper because there's going to be a lot of nuggets that John will deliver. We will try and get to Q&A. You have the option of dropping your questions either in the LinkedIn channel or if you joined us via WebEx in the Q&A at the bottom right. We're pretty close on time, so we may not get to them, but as always, if you ask a question and we don't get to it, then we will certainly follow up with you, whether that's John or UWL or both. So feel free to drop them in there, but again, we're pretty tight on time. Couple of housekeeping items before we get started, and then we'll get right in. So the session today is being recorded. So for participants, you will get a copy of the presentation once we're done. We will also make a copy of both John and Joe's presentation available to you. However, those presentations are not meant for commercial use per the fair use law, so please don't share them or grab that content and steal it for yourselves. We would appreciate that. John is available to be connected with directly, so even if the presentation today is all you were looking for, I would strongly encourage that you connect with John and Monex on the various different social media channels. And we can always facilitate a direct engagement as well if you prefer. And then lastly, we are again committed to going for 1 hour today. So we're going to try and close this down right around 1:30. We sincerely hope that you stay till the end. And that is enough from me. So John, my friend, you have the floor.
Could you give me the right to share the screen?
Yep. Kelly, you good?
Yep, you should be good to share, John.
Let's see. There we go. Do you see it?
Yep, looks good.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you so much. This is the third year. Just a slight observation. I'm in the profession of making predictions and the economic forecast, and it's really a good thing when you get invited back, either podcast or webinar or conferences. So as long as I get invited back, that's validation that some of our insights that we have at Monex is useful. Just brief introduction. Our marketing department insists on it that we share like first 4 slides. I go really fast. Monex, we've been in business for 40 years. We got 3,000 experts around the world, and we do only one thing only, which is take one currency, convert it to another currency in a very efficient manner. And then we do the second thing, which is we deliver funds around the world, all next day or the same day. We just opened the office in Singapore, so we can provide 24/7 coverage to our corporate clients who are engaged in international commerce, trade, and business. And of course, in the United States, we're fully licensed in all states by their banking commission. We do get audited. We need to have performance bonds. They just want to make sure we do our AML, due diligence, KYC, just like any of the financial institution that's involved in cross-border payments. And we cover 154 different currencies. So we have a very broad coverage. And something really interesting has been happening. We're getting lots of requests for the currencies that were not that popular a couple of years ago. Now they're like number 5, number 6 on our list. Like Vietnamese dong is getting very popular. Indian rupee just exploded, the need for Indian rupee. Colombian peso, Malaysian ringgits. And we've been adding all these exotic currencies and looking for best pricing for our clients. And I think that's a reflection of the fact that it's a global supply chain. I guess many of the folks in the audience is familiar with this. It's a shifting out of China. It's going to a lot of different places. So even Monex's world is getting a little bit more complicated just to make sure we have enough banking relationship to provide efficient service to our clients. We're famous for 2 things. One, we have a Domino's pizza tracker. All that means is all transactions we do, our clients can track it real time. knows exactly where it is. And then, of course, our exchange rates. We provide real-time wholesale exchange rate for any size of the transaction. Now, that being the case, my team is based out of Washington, D.C. It's a small team of about 12. And we are one of 96 financial institutions that provide economic and currency forecasts to Bloomberg on a quarterly basis. So if you have a Bloomberg terminal, just go type in FX ranking, and you get to see all the financial institutions and how well they're performing. And for the past 2 years, we've been consistently in top 10. In fact, we just got a notification from Bloomberg that fourth quarter of last year, we came at number 7 in terms of making predictions. And we're very proud because we're a small shop compared to big money center banks like Citi, JP Morgan, Deutsche, and things like that. But we've been consistently in top 10. And one of the exercises my team, we do on an annual basis. It's usually about right before Thanksgiving. We lock ourselves into our favorite conference room. It's called US Dollar Room. And many of us are inspired by Professor Robert Shiller at Yale. And his whole thesis is that if you want to understand where the market is headed, where the global economy is going, you need to understand and appreciate the dominating narrative that's driving all the events. So we get together for about 2.5 days and we explore a lot of different things. And the whole idea is we want to come up with the narrative, with the conviction. And of course, the narrative is all about what's going to happen to the US economy this year with so many risk elements that's out there. And in fact, I can just go through and cite 20 different material risks that could affect the US economic output for this year. But my top 3 are Fed independence, national debt that no one seems to be talking about, and obviously the tariff is our #1 concern, even for 2026. And I'm sure you guys are navigating through the world of tariffs as we speak. But one thing that our model did not capture completely, back in last April, we thought the effective tariff rate of the United States is going to be roughly about 22-21%. But right now, as of last month, it's about 10.7%. That's the weighted basis. In fact, on my Bloomberg, I always have the screen, the terminal up, which is effective tariff rate by country, by commodity. Put it all together, average it out, it's about 10.65%, 10 percentage point below what we thought it was going to be. So tariff had less impact on the US economy last year than we initially forecasted. Yet it still has a material effect, and I'll go through the numbers as well. One of the interesting facts, data points is that despite all the trade tension between US and Mexico and Canada, the effective tariff rates from Mexico to US is below 5%. That's because 80 to 90% of their exports are covered under USMCA, which is coming up for review middle of this year. And Canada is below 3%. So USMCA is in place, is making a big difference. China is at the top at 37.34%. Obviously, if anything that involves heavy metals like iron, aluminum, were well over 75%. And of course, it was very, very difficult for my team to make forecasts, especially second half of this year with the longest government shutdown of 45 days. In fact, as of about 3 weeks ago, so that's my screenshot on my Bloomberg, we were still getting the economic data that has been much delayed. Economic data from October, November, December were just coming in. And as of this morning, we are finally catching up on all the current economic data. So our crystal ball is getting a little bit clearer. But for the past 3 months, I was like a driver that's driving the car using rearview mirror. And so we have to use a lot of secondary data to put the narrative together. So the key question for this year is US economy. Is it the glass half full or half empty? And we did a comprehensive survey of other houses and institutions. And overall consensus is there's about 37% chance of recession this year, especially the second half. I used to work for JP Morgan, and I still follow their research shop, and they think there's about 40% chance there's going to be a recession. And I was really stunned. My idol, my econ idol, Mark Zandi at Moody, he says we're already in recession that's rolling from sector to sector. But at Monex, at the end of the 2.5 days, we concluded that the outlook for this year is glass is half full. And out of 24 different macroeconomic forecasts that we looked at, by the way, we're trading shops, so we don't actually produce the macro forecast. We consume it, but then we wrap the narrative around that and we execute our trades for our clients. And the best one, that I shouldn't say best one, the most comfortable one that fits our narrative, our perspective of 2026 is the economic forecast from IMF that was released late October of last year. And their underlying assumption is that the world economy is going to be very resilient. And then, of course, the United States economy that grew 2% in 2025 will actually accelerate this year to growth to 2.1. We're in the camp of higher acceleration, maybe 2.4, 2.5. I'll explain why that's the case. And compared to Europe, our growth rate is going to be twice as fast. And there's a reason for that, and I'll cover that as well. Now, one of the reasons why we think there is going to be acceleration of the US growth rate is just looking at the data that finally came out last week. If you look at the quarterly GDP growth data for the US, the first quarter of last year was a negative. This is when everyone was talking about recession. 90% probability we're going to be in recession. And the reason it came out negative was there was surge in imports, and I'm sure most of you experienced that. And that's because companies were front-running the tariff that was expected in April. And when import comes up, that's negative for GDP, so we had a slight contraction. By the second quarter, we normalized, so the economy grew close to 4%, which was very impressive. And big surprise of last week was the third quarter GDP that came out, and it came out to be well above 4. It's 4.3%, which is phenomenal technically. And the fourth quarter, we're tracking it as we speak. But this was no surprise to us because as we're wrapping down the year, every day my team members, we track what's known as Atlanta Fed now. By the way, if you're sitting at your desk and you want to know how fast US economy is growing real time, just Google Atlanta Fed GDP now. What they do is they share their economic model reading on their website on the front page, and they incorporate all the latest economic indicators that come out that week, and they calculate that. And this was the reading that we had going into the release of the third quarter. We thought it was going to be 4.4, 4.3 based on this, and that's exactly what we came out with. So it's very accurate. And now, what was the main driver of that very robust growth third quarter of last year is two things. Number one, US consumers. We're responsible for 70% of the purchasing. It's very robust, so we're still spending a lot. And then that brownish box at the top, they gave us extra 1.5% of growth. That's exactly what I suspect Trump administration was waiting for. We saw a surge in export and reduction in import, resulting in one of the lowest monthly trade deficit figures we've seen in the last 10 years or so. Putting it combined, we had a very robust growth. And for the fourth quarter, we're tracking it again on Atlanta Fed. And right now, the US economy is running at above 5%. I think that explains why one of the folks at the White House said, I think yesterday on Bloomberg interview, expect 5.5% growth for the fourth quarter GDP, which is phenomenal. Again, driven by consumer spending and surge in export and reduction in imports. One of my students, I do teach at a local state college, and asked me, Professor Min, when macroeconomist says the economy is growing 4%, 5%, I mean, how good is it? They just don't have the context. Well, to me, when the economy is growing at about 2%, 2.5%, that means cars are cruising on a highway about 55, 60 miles an hour. At 4%, we're looking at a car that's going 90 miles an hour. It is very impressive statistics for an economy of this size for the US. And if you ask me, John, what is the key driver of this accelerated growth? It has to do, in my opinion, based on our analysis and research, surge in the labor force. We, in the US, we added about 10 million workers to our economy in the last 2.5 years or so, all at the same time seeing just slight increase in unemployment. So we had 10 million additional folks in the labor force. Unemployment rate increased just slightly. That implies we have a record number of Americans who wake up every morning and go to work every day. Right now, as of report that came out just last week, the December employment data, we have 164 million Americans who go to work every day, and that's the highest number we ever seen. Now, what's interesting is when you compare it to last year at this time, December of 2024, we had 161. So even last 12 months, we added additional 2.4 million workers to our economy. And this is what's happening with, even though there was a very strong headwind, which is if you see the people who are not in the labor force, it increased by 2 million last year. By the way, these are the baby boomers. According to our research, 12,500 folks in the United States turn 65 every day. And this is going to happen the next 5 to 6 years because baby boomer cohort retirement wave is surging as we speak. So these folks are leaving the labor force, and yet we were able to increase the overall number of people in the labor force by 2.4. And then labor participation rate for the prime working cohort, folks at 25, 54 is at the record level. So literally, this is the fuel that has been driving the US economy. But of course, someone might say, John, hold on. If your whole premise that the US economy is going to do well because we have more people working, or have it been working? Well, recently we've seen a huge drop in the job creation. In fact, I still remember the date, September 16th, report came out from the BLS that says we didn't add that many jobs. I think Trump administration got really upset. They fired the director on the spot. And they were complaining about what's happening with the job growth and revisions and things like that. Well, this is what we saw since the September. We saw a dramatic slowdown in job creation in the United States, which means we're not adding that fuel we had gotten used to the economic growth. In fact, last 4 or 5 months, when you average it out, we were just generating about 20, 30,000 jobs a month. We were generating 200,000 jobs a month just not too long ago, but it's down to 20,000. As a result, Federal Reserve did what's known as risk management rate cut. As you call it, they cut the rate in September. October, Chairman Powell says, I'm going to cut the rates because looking at the job numbers, we might be slipping into recession. And he cut again in December, which I disagree why he did it. I'll talk about that later. But one of the reasons why number of job creation dropped significantly is because Doge effect. 154,700 full-time federal workers, they actually lost their job after the furlough. And that really brought the average down. Now, my team, we did a deep dive into what was going on with the employment market. And we can explain it because, as you can see on the first graph on the left, between 2020 to 2023, we were getting net 2 million immigrants to the United States. So in order to absorb them every year, we had to generate about 150 to 200,000 jobs per month. But then, interesting fact, I'm a historian as well. I guess the history does echo. That level of immigration coming into the United States since 2020 to 23 raised the foreign-born population in the United States relative to the total population up to about 15%. And last time that happened was in 1880s. It was about 15%. And there was a big pushback towards the immigration, which resulted in banning Chinese from coming over, Chinese Exclusion Act. And then happened again 20 years later. It went up to about 15%. That's when we put strict quota on immigrants coming from Southern European countries like Greece and Italy. And then it happened again just last year. And as a result, we shut down the immigration, literally. Since March of 2025, we have net zero immigration coming in. And according to the Congressional Budget Office now, net effect is going to be our labor force is going to increase by 0.2, 0.3% at best. And the labor force might actually shrink going forward, which means we might be running out of that fuel that's been driving the GDP growth. But luckily, we have something good coming down the road, and let me go right through that. By the way, going forward, in order to just keep the employment where it is, we don't need to create 200,000 jobs a month. We just need about 30,000 jobs a month. And right now, last report we got last week was we created 50,000 jobs. That tells me that economy is still doing well. It's not falling apart in the employment side. At the same time, this is the data I've been looking at for the past 30 years, which I consider to be top tier in terms of accuracy, which is the number of folks who are filing for the initial jobless claim. So these are not survey data. These are the people actually who lost a job, went and filed for the jobless claims at their state government agency. And we collect the data on a weekly basis. And then every Thursday, we get the aggregate report. And for the past 2 to 3 years, the weekly number has been about 200,000. And this morning, it fell below 200,000. So we definitely have an economy that's not creating jobs now, but we're not firing people. So it's no job growth, but no firing labor situation, which means it's stable. And at the same time, we have a big surprise, which is a surge in productivity. It came about just about last year and a half, 2 years. Prior to COVID shutdown, our average productivity growth has been about 1.5% at the best. Right now, we're running well above 2%. And I think that has to do with the COVID shutdown period. If you look at the graph, when business shut down, they had to find ways to get things done with less employees, obviously. And that made a huge surge in productivity. And when we came all back to offices and work, there was a lot of confusion at work, and you saw a drop in productivity. And after dust settled, we see a surge in productivity that's running at about 2.1, 2.2%. And we just got a report last week that the third quarter labor productivity is actually accelerating. We're well above 2%. And then there's a good chance that same thing will happen this quarter as the fourth quarter as well. And that explains the remarkable US growth story. The dark blue line represents the actual growth and output. That's the GDP growth. And the light blue represents increase in work hours. And the red represents labor productivity. So working harder versus working smarter. As you can see, the surge in growth we've seen in the last 2 years or so is really driven by surge in productivity, which is a phenomenal sign. And as a result, we're seeing very robust wage growth. If the workers' productivity is high, we should expect to earn more. So our wage growth is running at about 4% a year, which is much higher than about 2.5%, 3% we've been used to. At the same time, inflation is running about 3%, a little bit less. So if the wage growth is 4%, prices going up at 3%. At the end of the day, 164 million Americans who go to work every day, they're collecting a paycheck with the net gain, real gain, about 1.5%. And guess what we do with the gain? We're very good at shopping. And in fact, the consumer spending is very robust. It's growing at the annual rate of 3.5%. Again, these are nominal numbers. So hate to be technical, but our spending is going up by 3.5%. 3% of that is due to inflation, higher prices, which means 0.5 to 0.1% real increase in spending. And we expect that to continue to fuel the GDP growth. Last quarter, as we get the fourth quarter data, and first quarter of this year and the second quarter. By the way, this is uniquely the US story, as you can see. We have pulled apart from our peers about 10 years ago, but the productivity gain has accelerated in the US. And I do have a theory why that's the case. I'm working on a peer review research paper, a very nerdy one, it's independent of something like this, why there's a US exceptionalism. And one data point that I want to share that was very insightful. The graph to the left tells you the unemployment rate. During the COVID shutdown, US unemployment rate shot up to 14% because a lot of businesses simply laid their people off, fired folks. Where in Europe, they had a policy of not firing, holding on to their workers, but continued to pay. So the unemployment rate did not increase, it just increased marginally. When the economy opened up in 2022, as you can see, it took a long time for the US to recover the jobs that we lost. With Europe, people just came back to their work. So I think that transformation, that people moving around looking for a new job and all that, they stirred up the system. And when they got all settled, our productivity has increased. So that's the US exceptional story. At the same time, EU is struggling to catch up with us or even compete with us because their market at the end of the day is very small, because even the EU consists of 27 different regulatory markets. And with the US, companies can scale up. And as a result, companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, they exist in the US, not in Europe. Only comparable competition is in China because they're big enough, the companies can scale. So going forward, I think the challenges come from China, not necessarily from EU. And it's not just my thought. Mario Draghi, former Prime Minister of ECB in Italy, he concluded after doing a deep dive that Europe was falling behind. And if you were a betting person at a race, which economy you're going to bet on, I would bet on US, South Korea, Japan, and China, and so on and so on. By the way, for investment tip, US equity is going to do phenomenal, and followed by South Korea and Japan and China. Anyway, now the AI story. AI is coming, definitely is here. Amount of investment that we did in AI last year is equivalent to about $500 billion. And that's roughly about 0.7% of the economy. And that was another boost to the GDP. And right now, the amount of investment we made in AI is actually greater than the total investment we made in telecom back in late 90s, early 2000 period, relative to GDP. And I'm tracking to see whether we will get to the level of railroads back in 1880s. Key question is AI. Is it going to further surge the productivity growth that we have seen? I think it's too early to say AI made a difference on those high productivity numbers we're seeing. But going forward, and I'm the first one to say it's very noisy out there in terms of the assessment. I've seen a high McKinsey study that says, yes, it's a game changer, to MIT study that says it's just waste of money. In fact, the MIT report that came out in July caused all my AI stocks in my portfolio to go down 5% in one day. And then their conclusion is 95% of the investment in AI resulted in no measurable return or productivity gains. But I am looking at other studies, like the Federal Reserve Bank study from St. Louis that says, yes, it's making a difference at the margin, But one thing I did know is that the AI adoption is rapidly growing. 23% of us are using it more than a few times a week. I use it on a daily basis, and we expect the trend to continue. And of course, I am also looking into a data point that I have not seen in the last 30 some odd years, which is if you look at the graph, the light blue line represents the unemployment rate of recent college grads. And the dark blue line that's above that represents the general unemployment rate. And one thing that has been true since 1990 is that the light blue line unemployment was lower. So recent college grad unemployment was lower than the general population, and which makes sense to me because young graduates are less expensive for businesses, and then you hire them, you train them, so they were more favorable in the job market. But that trend actually reversed in the last couple of years. And I've never seen this before. And right now, the unemployment rate for recent college grad is running at 8.4%, where the general population is 4.4. At the university I teach, a lot of seniors are very, very nervous because they're getting a feedback from their friends. Job market is getting very bad out there. And I think that has to do with AI. That's my underlying assumption. And that's based on all the research reading I did and all the white papers published by McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting Group, PwC. What they're saying is that the businesses are going from a pyramid structure to a diamond structure. And because of AI, you don't need to hire many associates as you have done in the past. So that's the bottom part of the pyramid. You can do with less. And then as a result, organization goes to a pyramid. Few people at the top, few people at the bottom, and a lot of professionals in the middle. In fact, the CEO of McKinsey spoke at the CES last week in Las Vegas. He said we have 60,000 employees worldwide and 20,000 are AI agents. So from that type of transformation, I think it's going to make a difference in the labor market as well. In fact, at our company at Monex, we used to hire 40, 50 young college grads and train them to be our associates, and then mentor them and grow them into different positions. But this year, we only hired less than, well, technically 6 people instead of in 40s and 50s, because we are using AI agents. Salesforce has Einstein, and we have AI, BDR, SDR, sending out emails, picking up the calls, following up on customer inquiries and things like that. So we're definitely going in a pyramid format. Implication is the businesses in the United States, I expect their profit to continue to hit new highs as become more productive. In other words, companies able to do more with less. And as a result, we're seeing a highest profit, corporate profit level relative to GDP we have ever seen before, which is good for stocks, by the way. I remember September 18th, that's when all 3 major stock equity indexes hit their record highs. And in fact, my personal special day was Tuesday, September 16th. I call it my own liberation day, because when I first started working 30 years ago, I said, if I have this much money in my portfolio, I'm going to retire. And that was the day, that was the last September 16th. I hit that number, adjusted for inflation, by the way. So, but then the FOMO kicked in. It's really hard for me to get out, and I'm still looking at my stock portfolio. It's still going up, and that's the productivity story. I think it's going to be the AI story, and I think that's going to continue to fuel U.S. growth. And hopefully, all of you own your homes, because the home prices in the United States is record levels, and we don't have time to go into that discussion. That's another 40-minute discussion why that's the case. But the bottom line is, if you own your home in the U.S., if you own your stocks, you are doing very well. And in fact, that explains this K statistics, as we call it. I'm sure you heard the phrase K economy. K statistics is that right now, top 10% of the earners in the United States own 90% of the stocks. And they also take 50% of all the income. And put it all together, top 10% of the earners in the United States are now responsible for 50% of all the spending. So there are 2 sectors other than health services where the job growth has been robust. That's the leisure and dining services. And that's because of these top 10 earners spending their money, the wealth. We call this the wealth effect. If you add the next 10%, the top 20% is going to be driving 70% of the consumer spending going forward. And of course, I hate to use the word bottom 60%, but the lower 60%, they're going from paycheck to paycheck. They're feeling the pressure of affordability issues, and their sentiment shows up on Michigan consumer sentiment and the consumer confidence index, which are record lows. But those surveys, everyone gets one vote. But in purchasing, in a market survey, people vote with their wallet, and that's why we're seeing this skewed economy. But I'm a macroeconomist, so at the top level, we have a very robust spending driven by this strong wealth effect. And then now we got OBB that's coming this year. And hopefully you're in the top 20% quintile of the income. With OBB, you'll have extra $12,000 to $14,000 to spend, mostly coming from tax cuts. And if you're the bottom 2 quintile in household income, you're actually getting an effective pay cut of $3,000 to $2,000, mostly driven by cut in Medicaid. But again, I think that's going to further accentuate the wealth gap, K economy, the wealth effect. Is just going to be more amplified. And of course, investment surge, we expect that's going to be about 0.9% boost in our GDP this year because of the OBBB. One interesting fact, I've been doing research, and I hope there is an accountant in the audience who can verify this for me. Under OBB, if I'm incorporated, if I have an LLC, I can purchase a car that weighs more than 6,000 pounds, and that's considered to be my investment. And under OBBB, I can depreciate the whole thing the first year. So I've been trying to persuade my wife that I should get LLC, get a federal ID number, and buy a Mercedes GL SUV because that weighs slightly above 6,000 pounds. And then I can depreciate the whole $125,000 purchase against my taxes. And if you have any opinions about that, let me know. I got to talk to my CPA about that. Another thing is it's already happening across the United States. This is a weekly drive I take to get into Washington, D.C. from Virginia to Monex. And I have a habit of counting the number of cranes along 395 North. And last month, I counted 8, which was highest I ever seen. And then I can pretty much relate number of crane versus economic growth in my region. So that also tells me that we're going to have a very robust growth. Now, that being the case, I have a new worry because I'm an economist. I always have to worry about something. It has to do with our economy overheating and the Federal Reserve not able to effectively deal with it. And that has to do with inflation. Inflation was running about 3%. October, we didn't have the data. There was no survey. And when we got the first data after government came back, it dropped to 2.6%, which is remarkable. And then we just got another CPI number on Monday. I didn't have time to update this slide. Again, it came out to be 2.6%. But then I am a little concerned about the last 2 data points because if you do a deep dive, one thing I noticed is that they didn't collect any pricing data in October, so they assumed there was no price increases. And again, they were late to doing survey in November, so they did the pricing survey at the last 2 weeks of November, which is traditionally the Black Friday holiday pricing sales. So I think there has to be some sort of holiday distortion, so I'm keeping an eye on that. At the same time, we're looking at the effect of tariffs. Harvard Business School has this unique AI agent that goes out every day and checks on prices, on digital prices on 300,000 goods in the United States, and they update it on a daily basis. And we really do know that the tariffs does affect the pricing. It raised the imported prices by about 0.7, 0.8. The problem is whether that's going to persist or not. And then, of course, whether this was going to be one time. The whole idea is we're seeing the tariff effect, and that aligns with how long it takes for the shipment to come to U.S. So going forward, whether tariff effect is going to be just one time, if that's the case, that's good news for the U.S., or is going to persist. I'm on the camp that I think the initial surge of tariff high prices is going to dissipate going forward. And at the same time, KPMG says not all the tariff increases are being passed on to consumers, just 50%. So a lot of small to mid-sized businesses are eating that on their margin, and that shows up on earnings call as well. And of course, we are expecting inflation is going to be about 3%. So my big concern is that the Fed might say tariff, it was really a non-event, and we thought the sky was going to fall, but slight increase in prices is not going to persist. If that's the case, we can be aggressive in cutting interest rates. Obviously, that's what Trump administration wants. Right now, the market is anticipating we're going to get 2-3 additional cuts this year. But if you really sit down and do the math, and I don't have time to go into Taylor's rule, it's Professor Taylor, John Taylor out of Stanford. He has a mechanical tool that says, given where the U.S. economy is, which is growing at 4%, given that the inflation is still close to 3 versus 2, given that the unemployment rate is close to 4.4, very low, below what natural rate is, it is really irrational, rationally, economically, to lower the interest rate. We should be keeping it where it is, or maybe raise it, because there's a chance for reacceleration of inflation. So that's the area that we're really concerned about this year. And it's not just us. It's the bond vigilantes out there. They're saying the same thing. So this is something that's very rare to see. I've seen it here, and I've seen it in Japan just last week, which is, in this case, United States, the Fed lowered the interest rate in December, but the long end of the yield curve actually went up. Now, that's a very bad sign, because Fed controls the front end of the yield curve. And hopefully they will lower the entire yield curve. So we will have lower mortgage rates, lower credit card, lower auto loans. But it actually went up. That's I think what bond vigilantes are saying. Guys, you're making your money too loose again. And I think we may have inflationary pressure that's going to build up. And of course, I'm really concerned about which way the Supreme Court is going to rule on the tariffs. We didn't get the announcement yesterday, so maybe next week. If you go to the prediction market, poly market, there is a close to 80% chance that Supreme Court is going to reverse it. If that's the case, we're not going to be getting extra $30 billion worth of tax collection that will help us keep the deficit down. And I think that's going to further concern the bond vigilantes. And then we may actually lose control of the long end of the yield curve, which means mortgage rate, instead of coming down, could actually go up. Auto rates go up, and that's not good for the growth. And then higher inflation, I think that's going to be a big misstep. There's a good probability that can happen, so we're keeping a very close on it. So wrapping it all up, we synthesize our narrative, and the narrative is we were concerned after the Trump's Liberation Day announcement in April. That's when something we never seen in the financial markets happened before, which is U.S. bond prices went down, stocks went down, and dollar went down. That only means that the foreigners are selling America, that we call this sell America trade. They're just selling anything that's America and then getting out. And as a result, the US dollar lost about 10% of their value since April, May, June. Big question is what's going to happen to the dollar for the rest of the year. My team, we were contrarian to a certain extent. We called that we don't have to panic. Second half of last year, that foreigners will come back. And that's exactly the data that we have. April, everything went down. And since May, June, but particularly August, September, money is coming back. So Buy America trade is back. But with the slight variation, foreigners coming back, and they're not buying the bonds as much as them before. They're buying US stocks, which means foreign investors are also recognizing what I've been describing. There's going to be a surge in productivity, higher corporate profit. In fact, if you talk to various investment houses, they're expecting the margins, SP margins for this year is going to be another 14, 15%. And if you have SP 500 in your stock portfolio for your retirement fund, we expect the fund to go up another 18, 19%. And that's very rosy. And at the same time, we're expecting that the Fed will be more hawkish than dovish. Instead of 3 cuts, we're expecting 1, maybe no cut. If that's the case, we expect dollar to be resilient, and that's what we saw second half of the year. It didn't go down as everyone thought it was going to be. And then for this year, we also expect the dollar to be resilient. So quickly wrapping up, if you're thinking about summer vacation for your family, this is best time to buy your airplane tickets based on research we did. And if you're headed to Mexico, it's good news. We do expect dollar to strengthen against Mexico because we think the Fed is going to be more hawkish. Meanwhile, Bank of Mexico will continue to cut the interest rate. So interest rate differential will be in our favor. We think Mexican peso will go back to 20, which is a very good value for the dollar. And we expect the Canadian dollar to also weaken as well. Their economy is going to grow about 1% this year. We have a chance to grow at 3%. Just the growth differentials alone is going to really support the dollar. So Toronto is a good place to go. Fun experience I always have go to Toronto is I get go to a nice steak dinner. I get a bill. It's in dollars, and I pay it. Then I realize afterwards, oh, it's Canadian dollars. So everything was 40% off. And I think we're going to continue to experience that. CNY is a tricky thing because it's managed currency. Every indication is that the People's Bank of China is going to keep the CNY stronger, not weaker, because they're coming under a lot of pressure, especially from Europe, because despite their export to the United States falling by 25% last year, their export to the rest of the world surged. So they had a record trade surplus last year, $1.2 trillion. It's kind of embarrassing. So they have to keep the CNY more expensive rather than cheaper. just to fend off this argument, they're using cheap CNY to promote their export. Euro, that's a difficult call. A lot of our counterparts think the euro is going to get more expensive, but we're a contrarian. We think it's going to be less expensive. This morning we went down to 116. I think there's a good chance we can see 114, 113 again on euro. Japanese yen, my recommendation is if you're looking for a place to go this spring, go to Japan. The yen is so weak compared to the United States. Back in the day, when I was first trading, yen was 80. You get $1 will get you 80. Now it's close to 160. Everything is 50% less expensive in Japan. But we do think the yen is going to get more expensive going forward. So this might be our last window opportunity to go to Japan, have a wonderful sushi, because my friend just came back and says he just could not believe the price is so cheap. Only problem is there's so many tourists. So there's always the trade-off. Lastly, if I'm invited back, I think there's a good chance we're going to be talking more about our national debt, which is running at $38 trillion. If you want to scare your, I guess that would be mean to scare your kids. I just scare my students. I go to Google U.S. debt clock and show my students real time how much debt we have. It's $38 trillion. It's increasing rapidly. Interest payment alone is $1.4 trillion now, which is greater than our defense budget. And it's only going to get worse. And I think tariff revenue is making us a little bit feel better. So we're not really talking about it. But I think the big story for second half of this year, next year, will be our fiscal deficit and national debt. And that could be bearish for the dollar. So we will be doing another deep dive at Monex around June, July to update our forecast. If you're interested, just send me an email or follow me on my LinkedIn. I post our insights on a daily basis. And I think that is, and the fair use material, I use a lot of third-party materials. And as a result, it's just for educational purposes only. Please don't use it for your own commercial purposes. And I'm supposed to show you this from our legal. And you can get in contact with me. That's the contact information. And at this point, I will stop sharing.
Awesome, thank you, John. Well,
Sure.
you'll certainly be invited back, because I'll tell you, you have this uncanny ability of always making me feel more intelligent than I am. So if nothing else, I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Joe, we're going to flip it over to you. We've got about 10 minutes and then we'll wrap up. So if you want to share, that'd be great.
Sweet. All right. Got the screen?
Yep, you're on.
Beautiful. Well, hello, everyone. I first want to give a large thank you to John Min for such an informative presentation. I always learn so much from you, John, during these and look forward to your future prognostications. So many thanks, John. And I got to go work on my portfolio as soon as I get off this call as well, too. But for those of you who may not know me, my name is Joe Pugh, and I'm the VP of Commercial regarding our SunChief service. I want to thank each of you for joining today's webinar. Today, I'm going to walk you through some key updates, highlights, and advantages of our unique niche carrier service, the SunChief, which we launched 4 years ago, a little over 4 years. Our focus has always been on delivering exceptional reliability and speed for our clients across Vietnam and Southeast Asia into the Pacific Northwest, specifically Seattle's T18 terminal. Today's update focuses on SunChief Transpacific eastbound services. However, we also provide Transpacific westbound services from Seattle back to Asia, which provides a balanced, sustainable service loop for the SunChief. So jumping right in, regarding our most exciting update of all, I am extremely proud to share the fact that we're transitioning to a weekly sailing beginning in June of 2026, or this year. The upgrade from our current fortnightly rotation into a full weekly 6-string ship rotation schedule reflects a strong continuing demand from Vietnam and the overall broader Southeast Asian origins. It also underscores our shared commitment with Emirates Shipping Line to provide an even faster, more predictable supply chain for our customers. And this increase in frequency significantly delivers enhanced reliability, more flexible booking options, tighter inventory management, and it does so all while maintaining the transit times that have made SunChief service stand out. Extremely excited about this impending change. Wanted to provide an update in regards to our partner that's powering the service, ESL, Emirates Shipping Lines. ESL was founded in 2006 and brings 19 years of ship owning experience to a table that was already complemented by UWL's more than 60 years of asset-based forwarding expertise. ESL's grown from a boutique carrier who focused on niche markets and world-class services into a major operator with over 700,000 plus TEU total capacity and a presence in 29 countries through more than 70 offices. I'm also extremely happy to report that the SunChief SCX service is now fully phased in and performing strongly. We're thrilled to have ESL as a long-haul partner who is very well connected within intra-Asia, Indian subcontinent, Middle East, and now North America through UWL. So moving into Vietnam, whose focus is the heart of the SunChief, we currently deliver extremely competitive transit times in the Pacific Northwest. 19 days from Ho Chi Minh to Seattle, 22 days from Haiphong to Seattle. And the speed, frankly, is a game changer for many of our first to market strategy clients and can potentially turn air freight into ocean. When this happens, it nets a serious cost of goods decrease due to the mode change. If inventory is on your books and capital is utilized, the combination of fast transit and future weekly frequency creates a meaningful cash-to-cash cycle savings for such things as reduced safety stock, faster restocking, and improved working capital efficiency. The new and improved service loop routing is Seattle, Ho Chi Minh, Shikoh, Seattle, with one direct call ex-Ho Chi Minh serving Southern Vietnam manufacturing centers, and via reliable hub and spoke service out of Haiphong into Shikoh, where it catches the mother vessel moving into Seattle. This structure provides excellent Southeast Asian supporting connectivity throughout Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Malaysia, either via Ho Chi Minh and or the Shikoh bunkering point for the vessels. Wanted to show us new and improved service map, if you will, quick overview of our service and transits. Shikoh is blistering at 15 days into Seattle, Ho Chi Minh again 19 days, Haiphong 22 days, Phnom Penh 24 days, Lam Chabang 25 days, Da Nang 26, Semarang 26, Port Klang 26, Jakarta 28, and Chinookville 29. On the destination side, Seattle consistently delivers excellent discharge performance and averages 24 to 36 hours, which is also supported by a dedicated Seattle transload program, where we can provide nationwide delivery transits within the 1 to 4 day range. We offer IPI rail service into such key interior points as Kansas City, Memphis, Chicago, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Columbus. Wanted to touch on the Haiphong hub and spoke service map, which provides a 22-day transit via fixed feeder allocations. Very important designation that these are fixed feeders. This hub and spoke over Shikoh supplies an even more dependable service transit combination, especially within the stormy winter months. Which for this year has been one of the worst on record. The move to weekly sailings in June will further tighten the schedule integrity across the entire network. Again, super excited about that. Also want to show a variety of recently improved Indonesian product transit and reliability. This hub and spoke provides a respective 28-day transit ex Jakarta and 26 days ex Semarang, also via fixed feeder allocations as Haiphong. Like the Haiphong hub and spoke, the move to weekly sailings in June will further tighten the schedule integrity across the entire network. Moving on to South China direct call, because our SunChief service bunkers in Shikoh for operational efficiency purposes, we offer extremely strong South China coverage into Seattle. Shikoh easily puts us from such South China area locations as Nansha, Yantian, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Dongguan, and other areas. As example, if you're if your ship points are via Yantian and we can pick up and load via shorter drays from Western and Shenzhen areas, there could be an FOB cost savings for you there. And the transit time, again, is outstanding at only 14 or 15 days from Chiku to Seattle. So in summary, the Sunchi future is bright with weekly sailing starting in June 2026, broad Southeast Asian coverage, efficient Seattle handling, and strong inland reach, all backed by an experienced partner committed to long-term performance. We are loving the ESL relationship. We're very excited about what this enhanced service will mean for your respective supply chains in 2026 and beyond. I wanted to thank everyone for your time today, for your attendance, and please reach out if we can be of help. Would love to talk to you. I'll make myself available. And now I will turn it back over to my much less Southern U.S. sounding partner in crime, Martin Karczewski.
All right, Joe, we're pretty much done. So thank you, John. Thank you again. Fantastic content as always. We will share the materials for today. The call was recorded, so you'll get a copy of that. You feel free to enjoy that again. I took a bunch of notes, so we'll definitely some nuggets for us to take out of today's conversation. Really quickly, just before you go, a couple of shameless plugs, I guess. We will have a contingent of folks at the Manifest event, which is in Vegas in, I think, the first week of February. We will be hosting a yacht harbor cruise on Saturday night at TPM, which is at the very beginning of March. We're also hosting a party in our office on the Sunday night, just right before TPM kicks off, between UWL, WDS, and CPG. We'll have a pretty significant contingent of our team at TPM. If you're not already on deck for us to spend some time together, then reach out. We'd love to meet you. If you're already a customer, we can't wait to see you again. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you on the next Freight Currents. Thanks, everyone, and have a great week.